Hey YouTube land, it's Untitled Chapter doing another action figure review. Now this is a video that I'm hoping to get submit for the Cobra Convergence IV, which is if you're not familiar with it, it is basically a group of like-minded G.I. Joe collectors all gathering together under one sort of banner to support Cobra Month, basically, or Cobra Convergence. So basically discussing everything G.I. Joe but Cobra related, and it's been headed up by a fellow YouTuber called Hooded Cobra Commander 788, whose channel I follow, so I will put a link to his channel in the description below. And this is for something that I'm not sure if other people have really reviewed much of, but most people tend to go for the 3 3/4 inch reviews. I know Hooded Cobra Commander himself tends to review mostly 3 3/4 inch. This is a figure that I got many years ago, way back in 2006. I actually found this in the States when I went to the States for the first time to my brother's wedding. So I found this and a bunch of other figures, and this figure is the Hall of Fame. It was released in 91, I believe, 1991. It's the Hall of Fame Cobra Commander figure. So it came with some accessories, which I'll go into. But before I go into the figure, I don't have the box, unfortunately. So the box for this guy was a blue kind of window box packaging, and it had the figure displayed without the accessories on him, of course. And what's unique about this figure is it's kind of an amalgamation of a couple of different appearances for Cobra Commander. So, straight off the bat, around the same time this guy was released in the 12-inch line, this guy, now this isn't the actual release of him, but they reused the entire figure sans the talking backpack. So this is essentially the talking Cobra Commander. I can't remember if the line had a specific name. I think they were just called Battle Talkers or something along those lines. But there is a review up for this guy. I think Cobra Hooded CC did a review for this. I know the guys in G.I. Joe Berg has the original version. So basically, instead of the red trim that's on this version, which is a convention exclusive, hence why he has the cloak instead of the backpack. As you can see, the back is actually really flat, and there's covered in screw holes, so that's where the original talking backpack would have been plugged into and screwed into place. Essentially, this figure is the 12-inch figure is pretty much a homage to this, except with the kind of tassels here reversed and this trim reversed. So it's essentially the same figure. You even have the holster, or the strap for the holster. The only difference is on the leg, he has the pistol holster on this leg instead of a knife, which he has on the big 12-inch figure. But essentially, it's a kind of upscale version of this figure, with one difference, which I'll get into in a second. But you can see he has the hooded Cobra logo on the hood, just like on that. I believe the original one had the logo on the hood as well. But if I bring this guy off his stand, he came with a big stand, which unfortunately has faded over the years. It should be this version red. I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up, but it's gone a kind of palish pink, almost orange. So it has faded over a long time. He came with this big rifle, oversized, silly, ridiculous rifle, which I'm not a big fan of, but it still just about works. So it has a little light and sound in it. So he could barely hold it two-handed, and there is a reason for that. So the base figure for this guy is not the original figure. I will stress that straight off. The figure that I used a more modern G.I. Joe body on this figure, because the original figures were big blocky things and they didn't have joints per se. They had the kind of hidden joints that figures like Barbie had for the legs, where you'd move it and it would make kind of a ratchet clicking sound and you could put it into place. But these figures didn't have that, or did had that and didn't have a proper joint system until I think it was around the 96 when they were doing the other kind of 12-inch G.I. Joe line, but not like the Adventures of G.I. Joe. They started producing better quality style bodies, but they never went back to the real American Hero style designs. So this is basically supposed to be Cobra Commander from Real American Hero. He does have a removable hood, which is one of the first times you actually get to see an unmasked Cobra Commander. And the only other time you got to see that is when Hasbro produced this version. This is the Star Brigade Cobra version of Cobra Commander. And if I pull the helmet off this one and bring the figure up, you will see a very similar head sculpt, with the only main difference being that the face mask is in black as opposed to red like on the 12-inch figure. Even if I flip around to the back of the head, you can see they even, if I just angle it down a bit, they even included the same kind of clasp idea for tying the knot on the back of the mask. So that is one thing that is interesting about this figure. So it's kind of an amalgamation of two O-ring figures combined into one. I'm almost wondering if the Talking Cobra Commander was going to have a removable battle mask at one stage, or hood at one stage, to have that sort of head sculpt underneath, but there you go. So the other accessories he comes with this large suitcase. If I open it up, it actually has storage for weapons. You could store the weapons that he comes with, which I'll show in a minute, but he also has his supercomputer for its time. Nowadays you'd have a laptop, a speaker box for playing back his dictaphone stuff. Again, you could probably have a phone, a mobile phone at this stage that will do all this. You have a large mobile phone, which is one of those old brick phones. A calculator, pens, a to-do list, which is conquer the world with an exclamation mark, and then buttons for the recording device. All of this stuff now can be done in the palm of the hand in a simple mobile phone, but back in the day, bad guys used to carry what are they called, attaché cases, with all their secret stuff on them. So he does come with a pistol. Now it is a very oversized pistol. I've never been a big fan of this pistol. It is basically just a Luger, a German Luger, but it's way oversized. Figure can hold it, even with the new new body that I gave him. Again, I'll get into that in a minute. As I said, I gave him a new body because the old bodies were just basically bricks. They could barely move. They had some articulation, but not as much as the newer stuff. I just pop him up on his stand. And he also came with this knife, which is quite nicely sculpted. Has a snake head on the hilt that goes into kind of like a claw clutching a, what I would assume would be some sort of emerald or some sort of jewel. And as I said, he has the pistol. So if I bring the case back in again, so the knife and the pistol were all able to be stored in the case, and he could close that up and work away with it. So he does have some nice sculpting on the holster. It has a sort of snake-like scale effect to it, which is quite nice. It is on just a simple strap, and he also has a leg holster for the knife, which has the Cobra emblem with the trademark on it. You know, Cobra were all about their trademarks back in the 90s. So you have a very interesting holster. Now I do wish it was double strapped so it would hold onto the leg easier. It's only on a single strap with a little Velcro attachment, but it has chains going on it and a kind of a box style. It is a bit bulky. I don't mind it too much compared to the pistol. I mean, it is Cobra Commander after all, so you probably would have some sort of, you know, ornate looking weaponry. He does have a Cobra symbol on the side. He doesn't have anything on the opposite side. He has the Cobra symbol on his chest, which is quite nice. Now I'm not sure if this one's faded a small bit. It could have. I think the blue might have faded a small bit. But then you also have this red stripe going down the leg of the trousers, which harkens back to this guy, who also sports the same red stripe. And as far as I'm aware, the 1990s Talking Cobra Commander, Battle Cobra Commander also had this red stripe. Everything else was yellow, like the trim here and where the tassels are and the arm wristbands. They were yellow on the original. I think it was supposed to represent a gold color, because this material on this is supposed to be sort of goldish as well. And then he has these silver buttons. Now he doesn't actually have buttons. All his uniform is held together with Velcro except for the pants. So he doesn't have actual working buttons on the top of his suit. But he does look pretty good. And because I put him on a newer body, he has more articulation in the head and neck. The one downside to this is when you do put the head on, or the hood on, it does make it a little harder to line up the eyes with the newer articulation point. But it can look very menacing in different ways. So if I just bring in the camera a little bit better, bear with me a moment. I just angle them down a bit. You can see the eyes poking through the hood, so it does look pretty good. Overall, it's a really good figure. Now, I do have another Cobra Commander figure, a more modern one. This one is made in the early 2000s. I think it's one of the Spy Troops or the Valor vs. Venom Cobra Commanders. I do like the hood on this one, but it's not as good as I think it could be. The eyes look very cartoony on him. You can see sort of the details of the face mask, or his face under the mask, which is interesting enough. But if you want to give the kind of look that convention Cobra Commander has with the cloak, you could take the black cloak off this one and just drape it around this guy and put the mask back on, or the hood back on, and then you have the hooded Cobra Commander sporting or rocking a sort of more regal look with his cloak. As I said, when they started doing the more modern figures, and later on in the early 2000s, they started getting better with their articulation. And then when G.I. Joe Retaliation came out, they went backwards. They produced 3 figures in 12-inch scale, which were giant, as they call them in the Star Wars lines, the shampoo figures. They were basically solid plastic with 5 points of articulation in most points, or in most cases. And they were solid sculpts. They didn't have uniforms, removable clothing for uniforms or anything like that. They had been starting to do that kind of. They had started going that way with some of the figures that released in kind of the mid-late 2000s, like 2013, 2016 onwards. They started doing kind of more solid body sculpts, but still retained the cloth goods or soft goods trousers. But they've gone through several changes over the years. There's been a few Cobra Commanders, but I don't think any of them have really captured the kind of regal look as this one does. So I always liked this one. I just never liked the body on it, and as I said, I swapped it out for something a little bit better. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video review, and I hope you watch more of the Cobra Convergence stuff. It's really fun seeing all the kind of fellow collectors bring out their Cobra vehicles, Cobra figures, favorite Cobra stuff. That's done in the Cobra Blue. I should have mentioned at the start that I think the theme for this year's Cobra Convergence is Cobra Blue, so I'm trying to review stuff that has that royal blue for Cobra, like the Cobra Troopers and Cobra Commander. So there you go, guys. A video review for the hooded 12-inch Cobra Commander from the Hall of Fame line. I do recommend the figure. It's a great figure if you want a good base for a Cobra Commander and not pay through the nose for something like the old Sideshow 12-inch figures, which I do have one of the first version of Cobra Commander that I did, which is phenomenal. But if you want something on a bit of a better budget that kind of looks like the good old hooded Cobra Commander, you could go with that. With this guy, the only thing I would say is try and get a new body for him, because the body that he came with is pretty blocky and pretty unposable, whereas with this newer body he has a bit more posability out of him and you can get better kind of action poses. So I did do the upgrade on a few of the other figures that they released in the line. The initial figures that they released at the same time as this Cobra Commander was Flint and Grunt, and there was a heavy duty. There was also a guy called Rapid Fire, which was kind of like Duke. He kind of reminded me of Duke, but they did actually release Duke as well. So they did do a few figures in this line, and then they continued it a few into the 93 with Destro and Stalker and a few other characters. So they're good figures. They're generally relatively cheap on the secondary market. You tend to find a lot of them mixed in with Action Man or G.I. Joe 12-inch lots. You can always tell the bodies apart from the more modern ones because they're all big and clunky, but the uniforms are pretty good. Some of them are quite nice and some of them are good for customization as well. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed my video review, and as I say in my videos, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Cheers!